Hi guys, and welcome to your first video in this Python refresher. In this video, let's talk about variables. A variable in Python is a name for a value. You can think of them as similar to those in algebra, but there are slight minor differences that you'll understand as you program more in Python. Here's how we define a variable. You can define the variable name, for example, x, and then you'll type a equal sign, and finally, you'll type the value, for example, 15. And what Python is doing here, and this is very important, is it's creating this value that's after the equal sign first. So here, Python sees the value 15 and it says, okay, you're going to use the value 15. I will, create that or store that somewhere. And then it's going to say, and what am I going to refer to that value as? And that's going to be x. So the right side of this assignment, this equal sign, happens first, and the left side happens later. I'll say at this point there are a few values in Python where Python has already created them before it runs your code. So Python doesn't create these values when you use them, but if you have something like 1500, then Python will do what I just said. It will create this value and store it in its memory, and then x will become a name for this value you just created. As well as integers, which are whole numbers like we've got here, you can define variables such as 9.99. And here what I've done is I've created the value 9.99, which is a float value or a value with a floating point. And then I've told Python to give that value the name of price. Let's say we've got a variable called discount and it equals 0.2. We can then say that the final result of our price when the discount is applied would be the price multiplied by 1 minus the discount. And here's what happens when you execute this. Of course, following the rules of mathematics, which Python does, this gets evaluated first since it's between brackets, and you get 0.8, 1 minus 0.2. Then you're going to multiply 9.99 by 0.8, and that value will get calculated and stored in Python's memory. Whatever that is, result will be the name for that value that we'll refer to from here on. If you wanted to print a value out and show it to the user, you can very easily do that with the print function. So here we will type print, and then inside brackets, we will type result. The brackets in here are not the same as they are up here. Here they were used for order of preference in mathematical expressions, and here they are used to signal to the print function what we want to print. And this is fairly common in Python. Whenever you see a name, such as print, followed by these brackets, what you've got is a function. And a function in Python is something that performs an action, such as showing something to the user, or it calculates an output based on some inputs, or it can do both. We're gonna look more at functions in a coming video. But this is how you'd show the user something in the console. So at this point, I'm gonna save this file and I'm going to run it. And you can see that the output is 7.992. So this output here is what this line 8, this print function, will calculate. Notice that we've got a number of other variables up here, but we are not printing them out, so they will never be shown. As well as integers and floats, Python has another data type called the string. Integers and floats are used for mathematics or for calculating things, whereas strings are used to store characters. For example, a person's name, a person's date of birth, a person's phone number, so on. Even though some of them do contain numbers, they're not going to be used for mathematics, those values, so we can store them in a string instead. Let's say that we want the person's name to be stored. What we'll do is we will say name equal, and then inside quotation marks, we will type Rolf. What Python does is it creates this string first, and then this name here becomes a name for that string. Notice that you can reassign a name, so that we can do something like this if you'd like. And now, name, instead of being a name for Rolf, will be a name for Bob. So no two variables are created here, it's just the same variable, but we have essentially moved it. You can of course print this out if you want. And I will save this file and run it. And you'll see down here that we get Rolf printed out because that is the contents of our string. Note that Python uses the quotation marks to signal a string, but these quotation marks themselves are not part of the contents. They are just used as delimiters. Instead of double quotation marks, you can use single quotation marks if you like, and that is totally fine as long as you don't mix and match them. If you mix and match them, then that won't work and Python will complain. I recommend you always stick to one same type of quotation marks, and I generally use double quotation marks. What happens if we print the name multiplied by 2, which is how you would multiply any number? When you run this, you'll see that the output is now Rolf, because that's line 3, and then you get Rolf for line 4. What's happened here is this has essentially done name plus name. It added two names together. That's the same meaning as the multiplication. And when you add two strings together, what Python does is it will join them, and it will add one after another, so you can end up with a longer string. This can be very useful at times, but normally is not what you want when you multiply a string by a number. Let's say you have two variables, a equals 25 and b equals a. I mentioned earlier that 25 is a special value because it is under 255, so Python creates it as soon as Python starts up. If it was a larger value, then at this point Python would create it. So we get the value 25, and we say that a is a name for that value. From here on, we can refer to a, and really we'll be referring to the value 25. So what happens when b equals a? Well, Python is going to evaluate a, and it's going to say, okay, a is a name for 25, so we're going to use 25 here instead. So this means the same thing as this. And then b is now a name for a, which really means that b is a name for 25. So now both a and b are names for the number 25. So you can verify that that's correct by printing them both out. So I'm going to print a and then print b, and you'll see that we get 25 and then 25, which is perfect. But what happens if we do b equal 17? Should a be 17 as well? Well, let's run that. And now down here, you get 25 and 25 for lines 4 and 5, and then you get 25 and 17 for lines 9 and 10. What we've done here in line 7, when we said b equals 17, is we've told Python to evaluate the value 17, and then make sure that b is a name for 17. Python completely disregards that b was a name for something else before, and it just says, okay, this b thing is a name for 17, a is completely unchanged. The assignment expression, when used like this, does not change other variables. It just changes the variable that you refer to. There are ways for us to change a by using b, but not when we're talking about integers. We will talk about that later on in the videos when we learn about mutability in the language. Alright, that's it for this Python refresher on variables. Do remember that this is not a Python introduction course, because we've talked about some quite advanced things here, but it's just to get you back up to speed with Python in case you have experience from before or with other programming languages. Thank you for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.